Carol, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me here. I'm happy to be talking with all of you about org design for design orgs. I'd like to share with you how to organize your team. Many organizations have a centralized internal service. They treat their design team as an internal agency. So there are statements of work. There are agreements about what's going to be done. There are creative briefs. There's high visibility into your pipeline. You know exactly what type of resources that you need, and you know when you can have those resources be available. Some of the cons is that it's not a very strategic function. In many ways, designers are being handed a set of requirements and asked to actually focus on the structure and the surface and less on the strategy and the vision. So it can be limiting in that way. Designers can feel like order takers. You can feel like you take your task, you finish it, and you wait for your next one. So what's another option for that? What's at the other end of the spectrum? What if there was a decentralized and embedded team? So in this case, you've got design and product management and technology all working together on different feature sets. And you can figure out, based on your context, what's the right ratio. I think ratios is a little bit slippery and tricky when you're thinking about, is it a two-pizza team, or is it, why are we talking about ratios? Why do we need to know if it's one designer to one product manager to multiple developers? It depends on what argument you're trying to make. Should we have a higher investment in design? Are we vastly outnumbered? It's one facet to that conversation around how to structure your teams. So if we have this decentralized and embedded team, then we can have a greater visibility across what's working, connect the dots, but teams can feel like they're working on one problem space for a really long time. They may be lonely. We're a very social group and bunch, and we want to share ideas and share what we're learning. So you can also see that in that model, what often happens is the design and the experience tends to mirror the organizational structure. In this case, this is 4 different teams working on different features, all part of the same design team. So what is another alternative? What now? If we take the decentralized embedded model, which has a lot of benefits, and we think about how to reorganize our design team, we can bring in a content strategist, hopefully, very early, to help us really think about the conversation we want to have with our customers. We can start to design those conversations, and we can have a centralized partnership. So the benefit here is that you have one team, it's a cohort. You can organize yourself in multiple ways. Hopefully you have a centralized brand guidelines, experience guidelines team, who's paying attention to not only what they're putting out there in terms of here are the rules to follow, if you will, but how are those working and where are they breaking? And bringing that back in constant iteration and constant learning in that regard. So another benefit to this is you get to see the big picture. If you have a team that's organized in that way with multiple levels of experience or different capabilities, you get to have folks focused on strategy. And then you have the majority of your team hopefully is focused on structure and scale, because in the end we do need to deliver. That's where we're spending the majority of our time, right? If we're not delivering, we're not providing value. And we're not learning. So if you think about a model that could work, we feel like we've seen this model work in many different parts of our conversations and in different organizations, in different industries, and in our own experiences as well. So we have to remember that our customers are on a journey. They're not just looking at one page. They're not just looking at one touch point. They're not just looking at one feature set. So if you have a set of teams, then you're focusing on how the customer is going through a process of either they're a buyer or they're a seller. This is a marketplace example. So if you keep your teams focused on customer type, then it becomes relatively easy to add a new feature rather than having people working in silos and not talking to one another based on their org structure. We've seen this model be used in powerful ways. So thinking about that model, I want to talk a little bit now about, I have 2 more topics. One is the 5 stages of design organization. So what does it mean to grow a team? How do you do that? What roles do you need and when do you bring them in? So first, great. We have a design team. It's 2 people. You have a maker and you have a manager. The manager at this point is a maker. We use the term product designer to mean somebody who is focusing on experience design. I'll talk a little bit about communication design in just a moment, but the product designer is mainly focused on structure and scale. The head of design is making sure that they're looking at sort of the strategy and how design can map to that and be part of it. And it's fairly straightforward. At this point, stage 2, You want to grow your team, you add more product designers. Fantastic. You also want to have that communication designer, so somebody who is being able to take the vision and make it real, right? So that can express itself in many different ways, but somebody who's highly visual, hopefully has writing skills as well. Really important that everybody on the team actually has writing skills. And this is where you would introduce your content strategist. Again, so if you're thinking about all the different touch points and you're thinking about all the different ways in which you communicate with your customers, it's really, really important to have somebody who's really focused on what is it that we're trying to say and how do we express that. So going from a design team to a design organization, now you have multiple teams. And it's more or less the same structure. You've still got your head of design, you've still got your product designers, and at this point you probably want to add a couple more roles. You want to have somebody who's focused on user research. Yes, everybody on the team should be participating in that, but having somebody who's explicitly responsible for it and being the insights hub and sharing back out and sharing best practices is really important. A team lead, so somebody who's now a people manager who can help partner with the head of design to make sure that you're accounting for career paths, career development, being really clear about what priorities are. And lastly, you might want to reconsider your head of design. Oftentimes, designers move up through their careers based on seniority, and there's not really a clear path about what that means. Do you just take on more work? Do you take on people? Do you now have to manage operations? We're overloading people in ways that we should probably not. So this is just a nod to that's something that's fairly common and something to pay attention to. So then what happens next is world domination. No. Now you need coordination, right, to manage complexity. You need a whole nother set of folks who are really focusing on looking across, staying connected, making sure that work streams are connected, making sure that things are prioritized, that we're learning back from what if a project stops, why did it stop? What are the reasons? How do we bring that information back in so we can make better decisions? Design program manager, so somebody who is really looking across, coordinating all of those efforts. This is not a delivery person. It's somebody who is a leadership position and it's a strategic role. Somebody who's able to synthesize all of what's happening, have a perspective on it, have frameworks to carry that work forward, and make decisions and recommendations. And then a design manager, so somebody who is actually leading the team and is responsible, again, similar to a team lead, so somebody who's probably still a maker, but is taking on more management responsibilities. And then finally, full infection. Design directors, again, depends on the scale. You could have 1, you could have 10. There's no prescription here, but the idea is this is a framework where at this stage, if you're saying, let's say 60 or more people in your organization, these are really important roles to have. Creative director, so back to the guidelines, the experience guidelines, et cetera. This person is probably running a team that is fully focused and dedicated to creating those guidelines, but also creating repositories, sharing it out, having a code library, a front-end development team, et cetera. So somebody who can really be running that program of work and iterating it over time based on what we're learning. Director of research, so somebody who now is growing the research capability and has research labs or a team of researchers across, depending on how you're organized and where you're situated. And then finally, a creative technologist. So this is not a front-end developer. This isn't somebody who's delivering code-based ready code. This is somebody who can quickly prototype, so you can test and learn very quickly. You can even make sure that you have this person up. This is maybe a little bit late, actually. You'd want to have somebody who can either have the skills on the team, but at this stage, you want somebody to have a dedicated role so that they can be creating and generating concepts that you can test early with users for generative research versus usability. So here are the roles revisited. You may be thinking to yourselves, what about stage 6? I'm thinking the same thing. So if you have ideas, tell me. We definitely want to hear. This is a framework that we're putting out there to get feedback on, to see if it resonates, to see if this is actually working in your organizations. We've taken a bet that it has because we've done a lot of research, but as we move through this decade and beyond, this will evolve as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you all.